Charles Kelly had the first medical evacuation air ambulance detachment in Vietnam. But because aviation assets were so scarce there, the leadership did not want to dedicate more helicopters to just medical evacuations. So he had to dispel that particular notion, and he would not turn any mission down. That dedication did cost him his life, because no matter what it was, he'd fly right in there and do it. Any pilot who used the call sign Dustoff felt we had to live up to the model that he left for us. So you didn't turn a mission down. Well, I'm Otis Evans. I grew up in Washington County, Texas. I'm a member of a family of 6. My father was a Navy seaman in the Pacific during World War II. And he was a steward. I was a cook. He was fairly proud of his service. In college, I did 4 years in Army ROTC. And then from there, I joined the Army. Chose medical service. I figured I'd be a medical administrator, nowhere connected with fighting. And that didn't work out. The Army at that time needed medevac pilots, Dustoff pilots.
Here's Dynamite 5-2, request Dustoff.
The call sign itself came from all the flying dust and the ground folks using that term, getting dusted off. Graduated from flight school. Then I was on my way to Southeast Asia. And I was assigned to the 101st Airborne Division, flying one of their helicopter ambulances. I think I was around 23, somewhat mature compared to some of the guys I had to fly with, because there were warrant officers that were just out of high school. Boy, but were they brave. Didn't realize how much danger they were in. We went south to fly with the 45th Air Ambulance Company out of Long Bend. I was fairly new because I'd only been flying with the 101st for something like about 2 months. And I get down there and that's baptism. I mean, with fire. Because those guys were in it every day, hot and heavy, especially that 4th platoon. But it became very real, very quick.
You're unarmed, you got $1 million aircraft, 4 people on board. The enemy may have RPGs, and yeah, we're gonna go in and get that guy. You may have to be a whole lot crazy, and there was a whole lot of them that were.
When you arrive, you always are put with a seasoned aviator. Early one morning, I'm flying with a captain. We go out, dark 30 as we call it. I was pretty confident in my ability to fly. Now, I'd never flown in combat. We're going in to make a pickup. I mean, it's hot. We can see the tracers. They were coming really close. We took 2 hits, but we got in and made the pickup. Same day,
Type of injury is urgent.
we got another call to pick up a soldier that had been hit by sniper fire. So we lined up and we're on final, and then 2 rounds came and hit the aircraft right under my seat. So the crew chief flipped the seat back. There's no blood, Lieutenant, you're all right. Now I'm thinking, I'm flying with a seasoned aviator. I figured now he's gonna back out, find another strategy. No, he lined right back up, and in we went.
One of the things we learned early on was that the Dustoffs, they could get a helicopter to you probably within 20 minutes, sometimes sooner than that. As far as what the conditions were on the ground in Vietnam, somebody was either tripping a booby trap or we were getting into contact an average of at least every week or every other week. We had guys, when we put them on the helicopter, they would be without legs or arms. I mean, just horrible, horrible injuries. Some of these guys, they would call for their mothers. And that was really a bad sign, because when a guy started calling for his mother, he was close to being gone.
The first 3 weeks when you are getting acclimatized to being in that environment and seeing all the things, the toughest thing is smell. You can see all the blood and carnage, but the smell that accompanies it, that was gruesome. Burnt flesh, blood, open entrails. You just got to get used to that smell.
You see so much trauma that you become numb to it. Sometimes there was some real heroics in the back. I mean, those medics were just wonderful.
Those guys are really good at suturing wounds. They could do all kinds of stuff. There is a lot of emotional trauma that you feel initially, but as you become familiar with it, you become numb to it, and you just do your job.
The helicopter rotor blade sound when they came to get us, It was one of the best sounds because we knew help was coming. We knew that if a guy could get on that chopper, he'd probably get back to the field hospital, and 95% of the guys were saved.
Charles Kelly gave us the motto, "When I have you wounded, I won't leave until I've got you wounded." Even though you knew sometimes you couldn't do it, you would at least try. And the more you were successful, the bigger your ego got. Now, I got myself into a whole bunch of trouble one day. We had a call to pick up some wounded on the side of a small mountain, cloud cover over them. We could talk to them, but we couldn't land because we were on top of the clouds. So I go back to the fire base. I want to tell them, "Look, guys, I can't do this because these guys are socked in." And this guy was bent over the table and he stood up. Real tall gentleman. And he had a star on it. He says, "What's the problem, Captain? You can't do the mission?" Now, if I'd have been smart, I would have told him, "Well, it's kind of tough because," no, I popped right back and, "Sir, it ain't a mission I can't accomplish." So I fly back out over the area and I'm there circling, and I call a guy on the ground and says, "Was there space between the tops of his trees that he could see and the clouds?" He says, "Oh yeah, that's plenty of space there." I said, "Do you have any flares?" He says, "Yes." I said, "Well, shoot a flare straight up. Don't let it hit anything, just shoot it straight up." And sure enough, he fired a flare. It came up through the clouds. I saw it came up through the clouds. And then it started to float down real slow. And I lined up with it and I just followed it down. And I popped out above the trees. When I got back to the unit and the first sergeant told that story, he says, "That Evans crackerjack. Man, when you get to be a crackerjack, man, you're that close to God." Ego will always cause you to do something that's just dumb. But there was a good reason for doing it. Someone's loved one will go home based on what I've done. And all of that gives a justification for what we do, for the risk we take. There is something that is gained from it.
When you get somebody out, climb to altitude, and you're going back to the hospital, it is a great feeling. One of our Dustoff pilots was a Major General and Medal of Honor winner. He said, "We changed history because all those people that we rescued went home and they had children and their children had children and they became doctors and lawyers, and we changed history." And that's a good thought.
I guess the most flying we had to do was during Operation Hamburger Hill. We did a lot of flying there. Maybe a dozen missions a day. Ours was short missions, sometimes very hairy missions. My relationship with the guys that I flew with, well, we all were comrades. And of course, just like ground units, you form friendships. And when someone is lost, you feel the pain.
In the year I was there, we had 17 crew members killed, pilots and crew, chiefs and medics.
Jerry Lee was a pilot. An RPG hit their aircraft. And my closest friend, Captain George Miner, crashed into the trees. Both were killed.
There's always a mission that you could have been on. There was one where I was supposed to go up. We had 21 inches of rain in 24 hours and we just couldn't get out. And the pilot the next day crashed and killed everybody on the crew.
You don't have a lot of time to mourn because every day there was a mission. Everybody knew what the game was. Everybody knew that any day you could not come back. Didn't get to be important to any aviator in my unit until they were on that last 30 days. Now it really weighed on you a lot when you flew because you had 30 days and there is a possibility that you may go home. Now, you weren't really sure that you were home until you got on that, as we call it, the Freedom Bird. You get on that bird, and when those wheels break ground, that's when that cheer would go up. We were kind of briefed a little bit on the plane as to what we would expect when we landed because there was a lot of protesting going on. So to avoid that negative stuff, we were ushered off the aircraft into the hangar. We were told to change out of our military uniform into civilian clothes. You were given your ticket and put you on a plane, and you landed in wherever your destination was. You were in civilian clothes. And then you learned immediately the best thing to do is not to talk about your Vietnam experience. And if people didn't know you had been, then you didn't tell them. The experiences in Vietnam, I just put them in a trunk, locked that trunk, and oftentimes if I ran into somebody that asked me, did you go to Vietnam? I said no. So many of us early on felt a little bit rejected because rank and file citizens just didn't know what a lot of those troops went through. The misery, the loss, the pain. My trunk didn't come open until I visited the wall. That's when I let it all out. You know, you think of 58,000 folks and it doesn't hit you until you see the wall. All of the things that you thought you'd forgotten or you'd put away, it just pours out. The whole thing of healing is you have to put that stuff out and rake it around, kick it around, and try to understand it. But if you just bottle it up and pack it away, you don't deal with any of it. Memorial Day has significant meaning to me in the sense that it allows me to reflect on not only the things I experienced, but pay homage to those folks who gave all. And it's something that we need to remember so that we never forget.